Jeff Marek is the host of The Sheet here on the Daily Faceoff, the Nation Network, weekdays. Hello. And we've been talking about your draft special a week from today. Get more into that later in the program.
Pierre's on
First
that
of all,
too. Pierre co-host.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Miss Pierre from the draft set. Yeah, exactly.
I will.
So the Canucks took a swing at Rossi. And we're rebuffed with the 15th overall and a player. Yeah. Minnesota wants players, right? They don't want picks. Is that what this amounts to?
As we like to say in the industry, we are out of the green banana business. Mr. Zegras, we are in the player business right now. Look, they're out of cap prison. They're out of cap hell. You know, they've escaped. Only slightly wounded because I think we were all really impressed at how competitive Minnesota were able to be. Well, they had those two whopper numbers on their salary cap, but they're out of salary cap jail now. They do have an impressive, like one of the most impressive stables of prospects in the entire NHL. Many of which you'll probably see this year. I mean, Steve Boyum's starting with this team. I think it's all safe to say we'll probably see Liam Ogren. Jesper Wallstedt, the netminder, didn't have the best of all possible seasons in the American League last year, but I think he's still sort of ticketed to take Marc-Andre Fleury's place there. But they have like an impressive array of young players. They're not interested in picks. They're not interested in prospects. They want fully formed, developed players because now, for the first time in years, they can accelerate. And they got nothing. They don't have Jacques Lemaire putting bungee cords on hockey players' pants, pulling them back if they get too deep into the offensive zone. They are going for it. They are skating forward. They don't care about picks and prospects. Those are all available.
My guess is the Canucks offer 15 and sort of burgeoning prospect. And I'll just throw names like Mancini out there, just that level. And then they build from there to get to roster players, right? Then they go to Höglander and Joshua. Then they go to Garland. Is that the idea, to try to entice them?
I would imagine so. Like one of the things that I wonder, just like more so from a Minnesota point of view than a Vancouver point of view, but I don't disagree with you. Like normally that's how these things work. As you well know, I really do wonder about. Listen, Marco Rossi and JJ Paterka involved in some type of swap for one another.
Right.
I mean, Paterka wants out. That's, by the way, just a quick aside for all your viewers and listeners, that's a tough one for the Buffalo Sabres. And I'll tell you why. That's Terry Pegula's favorite. One of the favorite players of Terry Pegula, Buffalo Sabres owner. He was very hands-on in the scouting. I believe his daughter was part of that process too. So that one is quite, like, JJ Peterka is quite attached to Terry Pegula from the Buffalo Sabres Buffalo Sabres owners, first day with the new tongue, point of view. Not unlike Zemgus Girgensons. Before, Pegula loved Zemgus Girgensons. And remember, every year, oh yeah, Buffalo's trading Zemgus Girgensons, that's it. And then he gets a 2-year extension. Oh, now they're going to get rid of Girgensons. No, that was because he was Terry Pegula's guy. And Peterka is that guy now. Terry Pegula loves JJ Peterka. Not that I think that it gets in the way of Kevin Adams doing business, but that'll be a tough one for the Sabres when that one finally actualizes, as we suspect it will. But I'm sort of looking, if you're the Minnesota Wild, that's what you're looking at for someone like Marco Rossi.
Few people would complain.
That level of trade.
Few people would complain about having too many centers. In that case, Buffalo would end up with Norris, Thompson, Rossi, McLeod, and then guys like Krebs and Tuck who can play there in the.
I think they're looking at Kulich as their starting center and having Thompson on the wing. I think in there again, like, we're not even at July 1st here, but I think in their mind, if these are the pieces, then I think it's Kulich in the middle and Thompson on the wing. I believe.
So the Canucks have interest in Paterka. Buffalo looking for a right side defenseman because they anticipate moving Byram in a different deal. So Paterka, is that like a Filip Hronek level trade for Vancouver, or do you think
I like him a lot.
I like collection of younger players or less established gets it done?
Look, man, what's the hardest thing to do in hockey? Score goals.
Right side defenseman.
Yes, I know. You want Aaron Ekblad? He could be available here on July 1st. You might have to compete with teams like Utah and maybe even the team that he plays for right now. But look, like Paterka scores
Anaheim
goals.
too, apparently.
Anaheim's in on everybody. And by the way, the recruiting there got a lot easier when they hired Joel Quenneville. Like that. Like how do you think they got Kreider to waive? There's Joel Quenneville. Like all of us, like right now, Pat Verbeek. I know we're getting sidetracked, but Pat Verbeek in Anaheim is poised to do a lot of things and make a lot of moves. And much like the Minnesota Wild, they're okay with prospects. Now they want to add some players. The pressure is on to start making the playoffs here. This is year 3.5 for Pat Verbeek as the general manager. Not that I'm saying some bloom is off the rose, but if you're the Samueli family, you'd like to see some progress here. Thank you very much. And the playoffs would be a good start. So I expect Anaheim to be in on a lot of deals and a lot of free agents as well. And if you're a player in the NHL, part of your pitch is you can play for Joel Quenneville. That makes it that much easier to recruit. Absolutely, it's going to become that much easier for Anaheim.
Okay, finish your thought on Paterka. I want to come back to Anaheim though.
So the thing about Paterka is like, look, he's unhappy in Buffalo, and does want a change of scenery. That's from all the people that I talked to in Buffalo. That seems to be consensus. I don't think that's a big secret. He scores goals. Like at the end of it, like he's a really high end a goal scorer here, and he's still super young and just scratching the surface of what he can be. I think that there's going to be. I mean, the conversations I'm sure that Kevin Adams has already had about him, gauging the marketplace. What can I get for him? What are our needs? Those conversations are well underway. And I'm sure in a perfect world, the Buffalo Sabres don't want to let go of him. Like, I think that there are some players that they would let go of. Like, there's a belief internally that their blue line is too young, and they need some more quality veterans around there. And listen, we expect Bo Byram to be elsewhere. I wonder, just as an aside, I wonder about the St. Louis Blues with Bo Byram, if there could be a fit there. But the Sabres, like, honestly, this is not something that Kevin Adams wants to do. I think in Kevin Adams' world, this is someone that is theirs. This is a homegrown player, and I don't think that Kevin Adams wants to continue the tradition of watching young, talented players go elsewhere to find success. Say nothing of, again, this is like Terry Pegula's favorite player. Not that it always matters, but this one is always a little bit trickier when the owner has an affinity for a certain player, and that's very much true with JJ Paterka.
Back on the Anaheim front, we talked a little bit about Sir Trevor Zegras yesterday, and somebody got back to us in the on social and pointed out that athletic player poll from a couple of years ago in which he was voted the league's most overrated player. Now, he was alongside a guy like Darnell Nurse, who ended up having a great season this year, and I think proved a lot of doubters wrong, at least for a year.
What do you guess? Seth Jones was on that list.
Yeah, probably too. You're right. So, what's the consensus on Zegras? That he's an enigma and something just happened and nobody really knows what? Or were the two 60-point seasons the outliers and he's not that player?
He is, as we all know, loaded with skill, right? He's that guy. Now, injuries have been a complication for Trevor Zegras. And listen, I always wonder what happens to a young player when they start to encounter their first injuries, how much it changes them. And Trevor Zegras has gone through that. I just don't know that Anaheim right now, because I think we've looked at this and said, is Trevor Zegras really a Pat Verbeek style guy?
Probably.
Like you look at Cutter Gauthier and go like, yeah, you know what? Like that's a Pat Verbeek guy. Chris Kreider, yeah, there's a Pat Verbeek guy. The accent on Trevor Zegras is skill. Now you can accuse him and say like, yeah, it's skill, but it's soft skill. I always believe that there's a lot of different. There's room for a lot of different styles of player in your lineup. And listen, Zegras, trains with Chris Kreider, and I think that there's a high level player in Trevor Zegras, and it's always better when you can find your solutions internally. And I know that everybody has. However many times had Trevor Zegras traded. Jamie Drysdale goes to the Philadelphia Flyers. His best buddy from the Anaheim Ducks, Trevor Zegras, certainly sure to follow. everybody's waited for it to happen, and it hasn't, because you can get seduced, and rightfully so, with that style of skill. And if you have enough Kreiders and Gauthiers and Killorns and Terrys around Trevor Zegras, then he doesn't have to be something that he isn't. And to me, this has been one of the takeaways of the Florida Panthers, is that they are exactly who they are. Everybody has a role, and no one tries to do something that they can't. Like, if you expect Trevor Zegras to be Chris Kreider, you're gonna walk away going, you know what? There's not a player there in Trevor Zegras. What was the old line? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's an idiot. Like, you can't expect Zegras to be anything other than what Trevor Zegras is. And I think there's room for him, certainly with the Anaheim Ducks. Probably not on that left side. I mean, that's Kreider, Gauthier, Kreider and Gauthier territory now. But, I wonder about him sliding into a third-line center role behind Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish. Long-winded way of saying, talented player, Blake, really highly skilled. I don't think Anaheim wants to quit on that.
How concerned would you be if you're the Canucks about the thinning center market with Duchesne and Donato having already re-signed?
Oh, boy. John Tavares, Claude Giroux, Radek Faksa. We get to Radek Faksa pretty fast. We get to Nick Cousins pretty fast. You're right. Like, it's not great. So you're not going to be able to just go out there and sign your next centerman. Sorry, I shouldn't say it. You can. It's just not going to be anyone that has a big impact on your lineup. I'll tell you what. Like, I really like the conversation that you guys had about taking chances. I really, really like that conversation. At the end of it, safe as death. We've all heard that. The John Collins book that John Tortorella. Jim Collins book that John Tortorella likes to quote all the time. And if you're going to achieve greatness, or if you want to get out of the situation that you're in, you got to take some swings for the fences, and you got to be okay missing sometimes too. Now, I don't know what the swing would be or how many swings it would take, but I do know that Vancouver getting out of the situation that they're in right now probably isn't going to happen by being safe. It's not. It's not. I know that the element of managing upwards and selling things into your ownership based on logic and common wisdom, etc., makes it easier as a manager, and that is one of the skills that every manager should have. But at the end of it, too, you look at a lot of whether it's draft picks or trades or waiver acquisitions or whatever, a lot of the successful teams are ones you can point at a couple of players and said, they took a chance there. They took a shot at a guy or a couple of guys that every team has passed on. And I'll give you the best example. Instagram. Last night, Brad Marchand. What was he doing? He was thanking all these other teams for quitting on these players. What did he call Gustav Forsling? Mr. Waivers? It's like, these are all things that you take swings, and you can't be scared to take swings for fear of just being criticized. That's why I really enjoyed your conversation, talking about right now Vancouver's in a spot where they got to take chances.
So Thomas Drance reporting that there is a portion of the Vancouver Canucks that is open to Filip Chytil just being the solution at second line center.
They're already resigning themselves to plan C or D.
So is that a swing? Because you're taking a chance on a guy who hasn't done it yet, or is
you're taking a chance on a guy's health? Like you're taking a chance on a guy's health.
On the shoulder.
He's like, here. The thing about Chytil is, like, when he's healthy, yeah, you're right. Problem solved. And we've seen, like, when Filip Chytil,
but maybe not even private problem solved, because he's nothing more than a 45-point player when healthy. Is that a second line center?
But what's the environment that he was in with the New York Rangers? I mean, he wasn't playing. He wasn't your first line center. Wasn't your second line center. He was playing like third line with the New York Rangers.
Right.
Again, like that would qualify as take a chance. But I just man, when you look at the health history, and especially head health history of Filip Chytil, that one, there's chances and then there's risks, and that one to me looks like a risk. I'll give you a name that I've wondered about, by way of trade. Like I know everyone's like, oh, eventually Jean-Gabriel Pageau is going to be traded by the New York Islanders to make room for Cal Ritchie, and probably around Christmas time we can all see this coming. Here's a name, and again, don't get too excited because it's not a top 6 name, but we just talked about Anaheim. If I was a team out there and I was looking for a bottom 6 center that I think could really help us, who is similar to in style players like, and again, I am not comparing them to these players directly, but more similar than different to centers like Bergeron and Barkov and Hischier, these types of guys. If I'm a team out there, and most specifically Vancouver for this conversation, I'd be trying to get Isaac Lundstrom from the Anaheim Ducks. Solid, two-way guy, hard worker, honest player, defensively like that guy. That would be, again, just a bottom 6 suggestion, but that would be one of those guys that I'd be looking at. But then again, I say that about a lot of teams. Like I think a lot of teams are sleeping on Isaac Lundstrom. And if Anaheim, because they're not done. Like Anaheim's still going to be bringing in more players. If you can shake loose Isaac Lundstrom, some smart team's going to pick him up.
Speaking of smart teams, did Seattle get a bargain here on Mason Marchment, and or teams like the Canucks who are looking for forward reinforcements? Did they miss out on a relatively low cost ad?
So this one speaks to the reputation of Jim Nill, and this is one of those things. I remember this used to always be true when I talked to people in Nashville. So Jim Nill sends Mason Marchment to another no-tax state. Now, in players in Nashville, a lot of guys would take less to go play with the Nashville Predators when David Poile was there. But players would always say to me, if you're going to do that, make sure you get a no-move clause. Because the last thing you want is to sign a discounted deal and then in a no-tax state and then get moved to a state where there's high tax. Because all of a sudden, now you're surrendering money. And if you look at what Jim Nill did, because I think he had other offers for Mason Marchment, and some of those offers were probably better than what Seattle gave up, like a third and a fourth. I know you're absorbing the salary, but a third and a fourth for Mason Marchment. I think this is Jim Nill doing him a solid. If you look at Jim Nill's background and history, he tries to send players to teams where they'll thrive or teams that they want to go to, because he doesn't want the Dallas Stars to have the reputation of being like, oh, don't sign there because when they give up on you, they'll make it torture for you and they won't send you where you want to go. This is why a lot of players want to go and play for Dallas and play for Jim Nill. He sent Mason Marchment to a team that is in a no-tax state. And that is a real solid for Mason Marchment. But again, that is who Jim Nill is, and that's what Jim Nill wants the Dallas Stars to be. I know there's a lot of markets, like if you're Toronto, for example, like we could have given more. Vancouver, we could have given more. Yeah, but Jim Nill is doing a solid for this player for the reputation of the Dallas Stars.
I hear the no tax part of that, and I get further chilled that it is even a bigger disadvantage for the taxable jurisdiction, the 26.
Listen, players have been saying it for a long time. Again, like I always thought about Ryan Ellis. When Ryan Ellis went from Nashville to Philadelphia, all of a sudden, his paycheck is less. That stings when you're a player, and you're going from a no tax state to a tax state. You're going from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. That was a tough one for Ryan Ellis.
It's almost like they need an equalization formula, Jeff, in this league.
How about you base your salary cap on net, not gross?
Yeah, simple fix. But it does sound like they're going to address LTIR exploitation in the next CBA.
Don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, this is going to be wildly creative.
Because we were saying finding the punishment is easy, but finding the fairness, like for the actual injured people, that's the difficult. Like
let me share this with you, because we have a very smart listener named Stu in Statistics who sent me a fix.
Okay.
You have to be on the active roster either 48 hours after the trade deadline, 20 games before the end of the season, or the final 10 games of the season. Otherwise, you have to sit out.
For the entirety of the 10 games?
How long do you sit? Because Kane sat one game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's worth it for them to sit for one game. It's worth it. You got to do it so that it hurts. Like, you could lose a series in 4 games, so to me, that's the magic number.
That's okay.
But he's trying he's trying to account for the legitimately injured players.
Yeah.
So you take the first few games after the deadline, you take the final 10 games of the regular season, and you carve those out and go, if guys are injured there, then that's cool. But if they're injured in between that, that's when you're going to have to.
From a league point of view, and let's face it, is it Stu and Stats?
Yeah,
Is that the name of the jump? Stu and Stats. From a fan's point of view, from a league point of view, yes. I wonder about the Players Association says, well, what about the players that were legitimately injured and are legitimately coming back on the first day?
Yeah, legitimately coming back on the first day. I mean, yeah, I allow for the possibility that, yes,
but here's
between
the
end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs, you have 5-6 days, and that is the magic time where the player is cleared to play. I don't dispute
but
that
how many
there will
times
be legitimate situations there. But
how many times have we said, if it were the regular season, this guy would never be playing? We put so much pride on this idea that in the playoffs, everybody just sucks it up. Like, by the time 82 games is over, like, no one gets out clean. When have you talked to a player that's gotten out clean from a season?
Yep.
Right? Like, everyone's got something. And, it just accumulates. And, we can't wait for the big reveal. This guy played with a collapsed lung and broken ribs. Wow, this is amazing. He played with a broken hand. Look at the sutures on Barkov's hand. For the regular season, he never would have played.
So to answer your questions, I think it's got to be at least 2. I was a little harsher on this earlier in the week, but maybe I get up to 4. Miss between 2 and 4 games based on a formula of how much time they've missed in the race. I don't know.
But here's
but that way it's punitive.
But what if it's legit? I understand. But again, what if it is legit?
Also, for the Players Association, like, how many times and you can totally put yourself in the team's shoes here and the players' shoes. I'm coming off a knee injury. I've been gone for the last 30 games. Yeah, I could probably play the last 2 games. But why would I risk coming back, quote unquote, early when I've got an extra week I could just sit out and jump into game 1?
A, to test it so you're not dropped into the playoffs. B, so that the rest of the league understands you're operating on the up and up.
So if you're really close, then you have to go and do it just so you can play game 1 and risk further injury?
Yeah, well, hey, Stanley Cup playoffs.
Again,
man.
I don't know how they're
Guys
going to do
risk
this.
injury.
But the PA is going to have a beef with that.
No, I know.
Will.
I understand the PA is going to have a beef.
The PA is going to have a really hard time.
We got to get it fixed. 3 of the last 5 Cup champions have had $9+ million players on LTIR to be able to beef up at the deadline and then have dropped these guys in game 1 of Stanley Cup playoffs. It is absolutely a loophole, and it is absolutely now
the one area that I was
helpful loophole, if not unnecessary.
I think you guys touched on this recently too, is the idea that Aaron Ekblad gets popped for PEDs, and that comes off the cap.
Hello.
Again, it's a CBA issue. I know it has to be negotiated.
Harsh word, but it's cheating, and you get cap relief for it. Like, in what world? Okay, we're almost out of time, so I got to get to the Jeff Merrick Easter egg. Remind me, because next week you're doing your draft show on Friday, so are we. So we're going to have to get you on earlier in the week. I've got a draft hot take for you.
We do need a quick take. We do need a quick take on the investigation of Kane after the Stanley Cup final. Like, what's the process there? What if they won?
Are Vancouver fans having cap recapture PTSD now?
Yes. No, Jeff. It's not PTSD. It is as real now as on the day they announced it. That fire, that anger still
There's no
burns.
post-trauma. We're in trauma.
Still in trauma.
I hated that with like every
CTSD.
hockey vibe that I have
trauma
in my body. I just hated that one. Oh God, did I hate that one?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, and again, I'm really uncomfortable telling players when they can or when they should have surgery. Like, I'm uncomfortable talking a lot about player injuries and how they should behave during injuries and when they should have a surgery. And because I'm not a doctor, I play one on podcasts every now and then. Just like during lockouts, I pretend to be an actuary and pretend that I know things about pensions and all these things. But it sounds very much like they're trying to figure out whether by having the knee surgery, it delayed the rehab for his other surgeries, his hip surgeries and adductors, essentially from September? And could he have had that knee surgery at a different time?
They should just strip them of the Clarence Campbell Bowl.
Why didn't they just start the investigation earlier, though? At the first sign of, I don't know about this, start it then, rather than when you could have been Stanley Cup champions.
That would have been awkward.
Hey, can I share something? I just heard it. Sean McIndoe had a great idea. Down Goes Brown. Had a really cool idea. I know we want to get to this Easter egg here, but I just want to get your reaction on this. His idea was, if the Florida Panthers, you want to settle the conversation about who the best team in the salary cap era is right now, because right now Florida's in the conversation, as are Tampa, as are Pittsburgh, LA, Chicago, etc. If you want to end it, 3's not going to do it, but 4 is. You win 4 Stanley Cups, the conversation is over. Wow. You are the best team in the salary cap era. So how would you feel if this, like in the sort of spirit, you mentioned, conference championships. How about next year, the Florida Panthers win? They don't touch the cup.
Oh, my God.
We're not here for 3.
Honestly, 3 is enough for me.
We're here for 4.
Oh, my God.
We're here for what the Islanders did from 79 to 83.
Well, this dovetails nicely into the Easter egg.
Oh, boy.
Florida, back-to-back champions.
Yep.
How many NHL organizations have won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the expansion era?
Philadelphia.
So this is
Flyers.
2 plus.
So have one back to.
How many NHL organizations have won back-to-back cups or 2+ cups in a row?
Philadelphia Flyers, era? New York Islanders,
correct.
Edmonton Oilers, Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm trying to think who was the next after that. Detroit Red Wings did.
Correct. You're at 5.
How many pairs are there?
Well, Penguins did it twice.
No, but
Penguins did it
but they
twice.
only counts as once. NHL organizations.
Did you give us the final number?
No, I did not.
Hang on.
I'm asking you for the number.
So Florida
I can
Panthers,
tell you about the repeats, though.
Tampa Bay Lightning.
Tampa Bay is another, correct?
Tampa Bay Lightning.
We're at 7.
Montreal in the 70s? No?
Very good, Blake.
Montreal. Oh, yeah, of course. God, the 4 in a row. 8.
That's right. 8.
8.
And it's been achieved 11 times because the Habs did it twice. They won back-to-back in 70-71, then they won their 4 in a row from 76 to 79. Edmonton did it twice, 84-85, 87-88, and Pittsburgh did it twice, 92-93, 17-18.
Of all those teams, to me the most impressive one are the Islanders with Bill Torrey.
By a mile, by a country mile.
Bill Torrey went from this, a blank sheet of paper, to a dynasty.
Yep.
With all due respect to Sam Pollock, etc., Bill Torrey did it from 0, from like that opening training camp in Peterborough before they started with like 1 million players. And one of the players had to be sent home because of extracurriculars involving his wife. There was a legendary story of the opening Islanders training camp, ladies and gentlemen. And he did it from 0 to a dynasty. And then Bill Torrey, of course, part of the Florida Panthers for so many years, too.
If you're looking for NHL records that will never be broken, 19 consecutive playoff series wins from the New York Islanders is just about as high as Gretzky's points or assists. Plus the teams they beat and the way they beat them. They beat Philadelphia, the remnants of the Broad Street Bullies for the first one. They swept the Oilers in the fourth one, who would go on to be the Cup champion. They won 16 of 19 Stanley Cup Finals games over that 4-year period. Minnesota got 1, Philly got 2, Vancouver and Edmonton didn't get a sniff in 82 or 83.
No Leafs or Canucks on that list, I noticed.
No Leafs or Canucks, although it's crazy. The Leafs won 3 cups in a row in the 60s, Blake.
In the 60s.
In the 60s.
That was supposed to be
64.
The early 60s, because Chicago Blackhawks won it in 61, Eddie Litzenberger's team. And I remember when Chicago was poised to win it in 2010, I said, I should probably go back and look at 61 and, read some of the interviews and read some of the press clippings and see what the guys were talking about back then when they won their last Stanley Cup before 2010. And like to a man, it sounded like in their minds, they were about to win like 5 more. Like you had to have Bobby Hull talking about it, Litzenberger talking about it, Mikita talking, and then nothing, feathers. And then that turned into the Maple Leafs winning, was it four Stanley Cups in the 60s?
4 in the 60s, 3 in a row, and the Hawks lost a bunch.
Yep.
Sadly, in that
They thought
era,
they were
they
gonna
lost
run the
in
table.
65. They lost in
How many teams? How many
They
teams
lost
in the league? There, guys?
62. They lost 65, and then they lost in
Let's
How many
call
rounds
that
the
what
playoffs?
71 and
How many rounds
73.
the playoffs?
Let's call that what it is. They had a division title. It was a division
Too
title.
long. The Sheet Draft Special live Friday, June 27th, 4 p.m. Pacific. Jeff Merrick, Pierre
Thanks,
McGuire
boys.
breaking down the NHL at large.
Look at the hair there.
In the
Oh,
2025
man.
draft.
Look at this loaf I have now.
Daily
God, it's so bad.
Face-Off YouTube. I'm trying to promote you.
Sorry.
Merrick.
It's
Daily Face-Off YouTube channel.
The visuals are there. Just let it speak. Let it breathe.
Just leave the billboard up. Let's talk
Until
about it.
next week, my friend.
Go to break. Go to break. Thanks, boys. Be good.